Lance Armstrong, the founder of Livestrong, says now is not the time to cut back on federal funding for cancer research, referring to the House Republicans' effort to cut the budget for the National Institutes of Health by 5.2%.
Now is not the time to back down, and I think that if you collected the brightest people in this country and put them in one room, they would tell you that now is the time we actually need to accelerate things. The numbers speak for themselves, and Dr. Seffer and I were just doing an interview, and the gentleman asked us, he said, what would you say to the American people or to our leaders of why we shouldn't cut back or why we need to increase funding? I said, it's very simple. 600,000 deaths a year. I can't say that any clearer. I can't be any more direct. 1,500 Americans every day lose their lives to this disease. Imagine if that was something that we didn't know about yesterday and came along today and all of a sudden just started clicking off 1,500 Americans every single day. We would not be cutting back. That wouldn't be an issue. In fact, we would be doubling and tripling and quadrupling our efforts.
CNSnews.com asked Armstrong about federal spending on health research and training over the last decade. The White House has data that shows that federal spending on health research and training more than doubled in the past decade, from $15.9 billion in 2000 to $36.1 billion this year. And when the U.S. faces a $14 trillion debt, and we've already seen these massive spending increases in the past, are you saying that even a little bit of a cut is unacceptable?
Yeah, I actually.
Please identify yourself.
Sure, it's Nicholas Ballasy with CNS News.
I was referring to a hypothetical disease that came along overnight that all of a sudden started killing 1,500 Americans every day. We would see funding out of nowhere that would, that would diminish anything we're talking about today. But unfortunately, like Tracy said, I mean, I think, so I'm not. That wasn't what I wasn't suggesting that instead of cutting things by 5%, we should double or triple or quadruple it. That was a sort of a fictitious disease in terms of how our country would panic if something like that came along. But as Tracy touched on, and as I mentioned, 40 years is a long time. And you ask a fair question. Do you say, okay, what have we done in 40 years? But again, Tracy talked about complacency, and I think we have gotten ourselves to this place where, and we hear these stories. Our organizations hear these stories where somebody says, I mean, listen. I lost my grandmother last week to lung cancer, 85 years old, 84 years old. She lived a great life, and she didn't want to fight and go through chemotherapy and end her life in pain like that. But you could argue that she should have lived to 100. Or, people come along and say, oh, Grandpa died at 75 of prostate cancer. He had a great life. I'd say BS. I mean, the guy could have lived to be 95, and he could have seen 10 more grandkids and seen some graduations and gone on a few more vacations. So we've gotten to this point where it's almost, I don't want to say it's acceptable, but it's certainly not front page news. If those jumbo liners did start falling out of the sky, trust me, it would be front page news every day of every week, of every month, of every year. And so we have to be, Tracy said it perfectly, I mean, we got to be very careful with our country's approach to this, or our country's tolerance to this disease, because I mean, I think you just heard it in Dr. Seffrin's voice. There's a man who does not have any tolerance for what we're faced with.
Armstrong's comments were made here at the National Press Club during a conference with the American Cancer Society. Nicholas Ballasy, CNSnews.com, Washington.